You know that one ex who in hindsight looks like a giant walking red flag? You might be wondering why those red flags weren't so obvious from the start. In today's video, we're going to talk about those subtle red flags that aren't obvious because they look and feel like love. So by the end of this video, you should have a bit more insight into that toxic relationship, and you'll be able to spot those red flags in future relationships before it gets too far. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Common Ego community. My name is Christina, and on this channel, we talk about emotional abuse, spirituality, and self-development. Today, we're talking about red flags. And the type of red flags we're talking about are those that actually appear, especially at first, very subtly. And they can feel like love or like someone's caring about you. And what makes these particular red flags so dangerous is that you may not notice them as red flags until things progress further. And that's not ideal. Now, if you've been in a relationship where you feel like there might have been some red flags that you missed, you may have been in a relationship with a narcissist or another toxic or manipulative person. You may also know someone who really needs to see or hear this information. And one way to spread the information is to share this video. Another way is to like the video. When you like the video, it lets YouTube know that it's a valuable resource. In turn, it'll end up getting viewed by more people who might need to hear this message. So let's jump right into those 7 red flags that might be disguised as love or caring. The first one is love bombing. If you've been around this channel for a while, I'm sure you've heard that term. When we're talking about narcissism, it can also be referred to as idealization. And if we take it outside of the realm of narcissism completely, we can look at this as just going too fast, too soon. So you don't have to think that the person is a narcissist. You don't have to label them. But when somebody really comes in hot and heavy, if they're coming in too fast and trying to get to know you too soon, or make it seem like they know you better than they do, that's definitely a red flag. Really here, you're going to get the sense that this person is overeager. And if you have a tendency towards codependency, that might feel good. It might feel like you want that instant connection. Like maybe this is your soulmate and this is all really good for you. But the reality of all of this is that you should never really feel like this person didn't have a life without you. Like their world was completely empty until you stepped in. People should have interests outside of a relationship. They should have friendships outside of a relationship. So if somebody is just going to jump in and spend every waking moment with you, that can really be a red flag. Why? Because it feels like there was nothing there before you, and you can bet there was. They weren't just sitting around doing nothing. They don't have outside interests, possibly because someone else was in your place before. And that's not a healthy way to start a relationship. So whether you're dealing with somebody who is extremely codependent and really just wants to have that instant connection, be in a relationship really fast, or whether you're dealing with a manipulative person like a narcissist, this isn't a good situation. This isn't where you want to be. You don't want to be filling someone else's shoes, and you don't want to instantly be everything for another person. Another major red flag that can appear subtle, especially at first, is running hot and cold. So this is what we sometimes refer to as the Jekyll and Hyde personality. This is someone who's really nice sometimes and really not other times. And it can be really unpredictable. So you don't know how to make this person happy. At first, it might seem like everything makes this person happy, right? But then, especially if you're dating a narcissist, you might enter what's called the devaluation stage. And at that point, that's when they start to knock you off your pedestal. And this is a pedestal that they put you on. So at its core, what we're talking about here is intermittent reinforcement. And intermittent reinforcement is extremely dangerous because it can leave you craving the next positive reinforcement because you don't know when it's going to come. And there's been a little bit of confusion when I've talked about intermittent reinforcement in the past, so I want to make sure to be clear about this. Intermittent reinforcement isn't just being nice and being not nice. It's the fact that it's completely unpredictable. Maybe sometimes you can predict what's going to set someone off, and so you try not to do those things that are going to set someone off. But when you're with a manipulative person, when you're with a narcissist, the things that upset this person are not going to stay the same. They are not static. I've said this in another video, but it's almost like you could set off a narcissist by asking them to pass the salt. You ask them to pass the salt, and suddenly they're claiming that you're challenging their character, their integrity, because of course they knew that you wanted the salt, and they were going to give it to you if you had only given them the chance. So another subtle red flag that may feel like love is expensive or over-the-top gift giving. And this will usually happen in the love bombing or idealization phase. It may happen throughout the relationship at certain times too. And usually this is a manipulative tactic. Now, if you're with someone who's constantly always likes to give you nice gifts, then maybe that's not manipulation. But with a manipulative person, the gifts are tied to that intermittent reinforcement. So sometimes you may get them and sometimes you may not. And there may not be any rhyme or reason. Or you may get them a lot in the beginning and not at all later on. You just really don't know where you stand with this person. Actually, that's a common thread with any relationship with a narcissist. You really just don't know where you stand. And really, that's by design. So in a toxic relationship with a manipulative person, you may get expensive gifts early on, and that creates a sense that you owe this person. So another red flag disguised as love or caring is the data collection red flag. And this is when a person, again, early on, will ask you a lot of questions about yourself and seem very interested. They're interested in all your hobbies and your friends and your family. Ultimately, they're interested in you and anything you find interesting. But this is a tricky one, because anyone who's genuinely interested in you is going to be interested in the things you like. So the difference here is that you feel like you're being interviewed, like it's all about you. And you may find yourself answering questions that you've never been asked before. Kind of weirdly odd personal questions. Like they might ask you what you get upset about, what really upsets you, or what someone can do to really cross the line with you. And if you're dealing with a manipulative person, you'll notice that over time, this interest fades and falls off a cliff. So they're not going to be interested in you for very long. At first, they're super interested in you and everything you have to say. Next, they don't care about anything you have going on in your life. And unfortunately, if you stay with this person long enough, you'll find that they will use the things that they learned early on against you. So if you tell them what triggers you, or if you tell them how people have crossed lines with you, they're going to cross those lines and they're going to trigger you. And they're going to do it at very selective times when they need something from you, when they need an emotional reaction out of you. So it might be that they're trying to hide something and they're trying to get you to react emotionally so you kind of fall off the trail. Or maybe they're just trying to make you look bad in front of other people. We've all been there, right? But they're using this information against you for their own personal gain. So another subtle red flag disguised as love is the guilt trip. You know, I love you so much and I would totally do this for you. You know I would do this for you. Manipulative people often use guilt trips to get what they want. And unfortunately, they're not always honest about what they would do for you, especially if you're dealing with a narcissist. They really only do things if it makes them look good or if they can get something out of it. Basically, if they need you for something, they'll be nice. And if they don't need you, it doesn't matter how much you need them, don't count on their help. So the last two red flags I wanted to talk about today are related. And the first one is jealousy. Now, jealousy is a red flag for a lot of people, as it should be. But as we know, there are different levels of jealousy. And even if it seems subtle, it's the biggest red flag when it shows up early on. Even if you see glimmers of jealousy in the other person and you don't really know them that well, it's a major, major red flag. Pay attention to these things and pay attention to how they talk about other people and their previous relationships. So this person may have a story that they tell you, and that story may not paint them in the best possible light. It may show that they've been jealous or controlling before. And unfortunately, a common reaction, especially from somebody who's familiar with people pleasing, is to jump in and try to make this person feel better about themselves and to feel better about the situation. Oh, it's no big deal. Everybody does that. Or they may tell this story about how they were jealous and controlling, and in this story there's a villain. So they acted this way because the other person acted the way they did. And because these people are usually good at what they do, they can be convincing. So if you hear something that sounds like that, try not to fall for it. So the one thing I want to say about this is that this is manipulation. And at its core, manipulation is control. So if you notice that someone is trying to control you outright, maybe they're suggesting that you shouldn't hang out with certain people, like your friends or family, or maybe they're saying that somebody's a bad influence on you and they'd prefer you didn't hang out with them. Maybe they're saying that you shouldn't wear a certain type of clothing. But this type of control can also appear subtly. It can be a partner who is seeming to be there for you when you're frustrated with a friend or a family member, and they get you to kind of trash talk that person. They encourage this rift between you and this other person. So now I know some of you might be wondering, what if this person is toxic? What if this person, this friend or family member, is really actually bad for you and you're not seeing it? And here's the thing. We're all adults, right? We should be able to manage our own relationships. And sometimes we do need a little help seeing toxicity in our lives, especially if it feels normal. But the difference is that we shouldn't feel like we have to give up control of our relationships and managing our life. No one needs a relationship manager, right? We should all be able to handle this, for better or worse, on our own. And if somebody's trying to manage your relationships for you, that is a major, major red flag. So if you can relate to the things that I'm talking about in this video, even just a few of them, there's a chance that you've been in a toxic relationship or a relationship with a narcissist. And I'm going to suggest that you watch a recent video of mine where I talk about the lies that all narcissists tell. They can be very predictable. So I'm going to pop that video right over here. And even if you're out of that relationship, that video can serve as a warning of sorts as to what could happen if you ignore those red flags in the beginning. So again, that video is right over here. You can click it anytime, but not before you click that like button. I'll see you next time.